Hello ladies and gentlemen, Dave Dobbs here. It's Tuesday, May 10th, 2022, and I've got you here actually. I'm at my girlfriend's place, and I've got my vans here. I've just been kind of doing them up, and that's where I've been for the last little while actually. I've just been so busy doing things up, and there we go, look, they're starting to, that's the one that's this van that I've kind of been doing up to try and cover the, can you see it? I managed to get some paint. It looks a bit better, doesn't it? And that's my the big old Mercedes. Do you remember I was doing all the work on the back? And I kind of like I haven't buffed it all or anything else like that, and I don't know if I'm going to really. But I don't know if you can see that really. Looks a bit better, doesn't it? Can you see where I welded all the bottom there, and put a whole new rear end on it basically. So it's been a massive amount of work, and I've welded new seals on the other one, and on this one I've got to try and find a window for the for that sliding door. It's all a bit kind of like a little bit mundane at the moment, really. Just trying to kind of like keep the wall from the door and doing various different things. Obviously I'm doing other boats, but they're just sucking up money, and hopefully we're going to rent the boats out or do something, or you know, but there's still a lot of work to do on both of them really, but I'm getting there, and I've had to take some time out to kind of do all this work. And also there's a big part of me that is just aware that, that I've got to be building in this world as well, and I've got to keep focusing on, even though I make these astronomical videos, I've got to keep focusing on a creative process as well within all this, as it's just tearing me apart. And I've been waiting on a lot of data that's only coming through the course of time, and it's a beautiful day actually. It's a bit cooler out here. The sun's just gone down a little bit, but it's so hot, and we've got yeah, it's quite intense. It's quite an intense time, sorry, and but it's very beautiful here actually. It's not intense here, but it is an intense time right now to be kind of like moving through with this constant threat of potential all-out war, and the threats are just getting bigger. And I heard Putin, well, the news here was suggesting that Putin had talked about a missile, that he didn't need to strike Britain directly, he could detonate nuclear missiles in the oceans around Britain and cause a tsunami. And I just thought that was so interesting to this thing to come out, because we're seeing massive tremors now in the Azores, and that volcano, well, that the fault line that it sits on is actually two fault lines. You've got the going from north to south. You've got the Mid-Atlantic ridge, and then you've got running off that, splitting the African plate from the Eurasian plate, and coming out. And basically, from what I can see, is really it's going much more out towards La Palma, and then up the kind of the coast of Africa, and coming around to join the what's a big, you know, the fault lines continues then, and is after La Palma is coming up to Etna, Stromboli, this sort of way, and then cutting through the Mediterranean, that, you know, heading due kind of like east under the Mediterranean that way, and eventually, you know, it's going to head up to the Himalayas, and then you're going to have obviously the fault line coming down that splits the African plate from the, I guess, the Indian plate, and that's going to, you know, we're seeing a lot of activity. You know, Stromboli certainly going off at the moment. Etna, lots of activity from Etna. Hawaii is really going quite a lot at the moment. You know, the main magma chamber is full. And what about this sighting? You know, this sighting that I brought in my last video, Strange Events in the Sky, last night in Tampa, Florida. That was posted by Nick Thomas on the May the 6th. 2022, and it was the thumbnail shot for my last video, and I found it really interesting. And you know, I've got to be honest with you, when I saw it, obviously it could be a rocket and it could be a flyby, because it's very difficult to tell the difference between the two. And if it is a flyby, which I'm more doubtful of now. You know, I've seen a lot of comments saying, or a few comments saying, that it's likely a chemtrail from a SpaceX launch, but it could be, and very more likely is. But the space and the place it occurs and that sort of stuff, and I did suggest that in my last video, but then I also talked about in this video. I said, you know, you're going to start seeing the red dust because we come to the front end of our sun, as I discussed in the last video, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a little bit, to try and make some sense of that. But I thought before we do that, we need to take a look at this shot. What's going on in the sky above? Well, I can't even say that. Ningbo. I don't know if that's correct. Ningbo, China. South east China, basically. I guess quite near Hong Kong. But on mainland China. And this shot, mystery blood red sky in Zhoushan, China, on the evening of May 7th, 2022. What happens in Shanghai? Now, what you're seeing here is he's showing various different, you know, parts of the sky here. You know, all these various different shots that we're seeing. But he's taken it to one step further, and he's gathered a load of the dust that's come down and showing that it's magnetic. And now look at the color of that. You can see that it's grey, and you can see out in space that grey-like effect is going to shimmer and shine and become bright. It's going to refract, but as soon as it touches oxygen and the oxygen binds to it, it becomes red. That's exactly what I told you we were going to see in the last video. This stretch is like what I call Asteroid Alley, and so we saw this red sky. I said, look out for it. You know, you're going to see it. You're going to be seeing it. And I talked specifically about the dust, this iron dust. Now, where are we suggesting it's coming from? What possible theories other than a dwarf planet spewing iron ore? And it's not like we're right next to the dwarf planet. It's just that these objects that orbit this dwarf planet pick up the red dust that it spews in its fusion process. Its fusion process is literally producing iron oxide, or iron. It's spewing iron. It's spewing helium and photons. It's spewing iron. That's how dense it is. To assume that our sun would orbit it when it's made of something so much denser, doing a much denser kind of fusion process, is remarkable. And then I want to come to this shot, because this is the shot I was expecting to see now, and it hadn't come in. And suddenly, after I make the video saying, come on guys, we're coming into Asteroid Alley now, and I'm going to explain a little bit more about Asteroid Alley, because we've got nothing crossing our paths at this point. It's not about that right now. It's about flying in parallel to things in close proximity. And we're not at what I would call an exit or entry corridor. And that's why it's so important to kind of have a bit of a picture. Why do we often see the kind of the shooting stars and things like that in either kind of like August, September, or February and March? Remember when we had not to say that's the only time we get it. That's not what I'm suggesting, but when is the kind of like, when did we have the big one that came in over Russia? It came in around about February the 14th, 15th. And we also had, ironically, one of the first sightings. And so why should we get this shot here that I'm showing you here? And this was not supposed to be. This was not supposed to be there. And this was again Mr. MBB333, and he posted this on the 8th of May, just gone. The sun is just below the horizon. It's taken from Australia. He did say what time it is, and I'm not too sure. But it's a very similar thing. But you're seeing the sun. The sun is kind of dropping down, so its luminance is waning, and you're able to see the silhouette of this object between us and the sun. And it's just a magnificent shot. It's exactly what I'm expecting to see. That's much more of what I was expecting to see. Instead of that shot, and that really, this is much more an indication that it is a SpaceX rocket launch. But we don't know, because remember that there are two objects, and so let's again explore what I mean by the front end of our sun and what it is to come for Earth, its perihelion point, its closest point to the sun. We will be coming up to our closest point of us out of the sun, and quite where it is difficult to say. It's anywhere, in my opinion, it's anywhere between now and early July, somewhere in that threshold. And it's a very, very difficult thing to calculate. And all I can tell you is I wonder if you're going to do some meditations on any type of shamanic meditation, especially now, it's a really good time to think about which way your sun is moving and where and how you see your planets in their big arrangement. So let's just, if I can find it here, I've got a page especially devoted. If I come over to here, and I come over to here, you now press there, and I open that up a little bit, then I can bounce between them, and hopefully it'll be a bit clearer for you. Okay, so if we come here, and we're going to start with Jupiter's perihelion point again, just to kind of remember that wherever you're saying the perihelion point is, wherever you're saying the closest point that something's going to get to the sun, you're talking about, imagine something moving through space, and it's got objects that are orbiting around it. As they come in to the object they're orbiting around, they're going to start kind of accelerating. And they're going to get faster, they're going to zoom around the front edge of it, and then they're going to come back off and go out. And in the same sense that anything that is moving from north to south of the ecliptic will have to go round that front edge to go from north to south of the ecliptic, to go from below the ecliptic to get to above. It's going to have to go from either down and across or up and across, but it's going to have to go via that front edge. And that front edge, I'm of a mind, can also be a little bit non-exact, because the degree of their inclination as they're coming into that front edge and their speed relative to the object they're orbiting can no doubt cause variations in what that front edge is exactly, I'm of a mind. Because, and other influences like in my model. But to have a system where we've got Jupiter, we've got Saturn, we've got Uranus, we've got Neptune, we've got Pluto, and now we've got Eris, all with different perihelion points, suggesting that the Sun, each one is suggesting that the Sun is moving in a different direction. So there's no consensus in our astronomical community. So Jupiter, for example, is over here. I've got this. This is set on. This is set on. Just to give clarity, when the Earth crosses this line here, this will be around about June the 20th to 21st, and this line, as I said in my last video, is set by. In this model is not my model. This is SolarSystemScope.com, and they've set the bearing line on this for June the 20th, 21st. Now, why would they do that? And I really want to try and go through, get you to think about this, because if you've got any type of astronomical interest, if you're ever going to build a model, the first thing you're going to do is add your primary, everything's going to be orbiting around. And as soon as you set it, and an open kind of like there, you open up a kind of a blank canvas, nothing in it apart from the Milky Way in the distance and the stars, and you're going to be like, well, where am I going to set, where's my Sun going to be going in this model? Because you're going to be operating all these kind of points of all these objects that you want to be orbiting around this object once you set it in motion. None of our main players. So if that is June the 21st down running along this line, that when the Earth crosses this line, to use again the planets as to use the months as our bearing point, that is June the 21st. This is of my mind is kind of the direction we're going, coming down along this line towards this towards me where my cursor is showing here. So Jupiter's running off there at about June. July, August, September. It's suggesting it's kind of like going off in that direction. And then we've got Uranus going completely the opposite direction. Then we've got Neptune, yeah, kind of a similar a good month out, September, October, almost November. Neptune's kind of perihelion point. Then we're back to, now we're down at Pluto's perihelion point, which is kind of close to Uranus's, and Eris is kind of, yeah, it's kind of close to, so yeah, I mean they're all slightly different. You would have thought that there would have been, if you're all building a different model and you're working at these things, because you understand that anything that's coming in, what I was trying to bring about my understanding with you is if the Sun is moving this way and we've got this object over here, and I'll bring my model up in a shake, but you can understand anything that's going to coming in towards the Sun but doesn't make it right round the Sun and carries on round its primary, somewhere over here say, and we call that a perturbation of its orbit, where it gets pulled in and then goes back off again. As it comes in, if it comes quite close to our Sun, you've got two exit corridors there, either, you know, entrance, exit, depending on which way it's coming. And we clearly see we've got an object coming in this way and coming out that way. And in Carlos Ferrada's time, we had an object coming in this way and out that way. Except that that object, that big blue object, this time, has come in this way. It's come so close to our sun. It's come in this way. And instead of coming through the kind of December-January corridor of something that's not going to go right around our sun, and then going out in the kind of like kind of September corridor out here, something that doesn't cross. This time, this big blue object has come in through the February-March corridor, and possibly even much thinner. It's so close. It's drawn in by our sun, and it's crossed, and then it's come round, and it's come out, and it's going out of the kind of like July-August corridor on the front edge of the sun over here. And that's why we always get our kind of like our August most common, because most things are going to come in and come round and go this way, because that is the order of things. For multiple reasons, because number one, when something is pursuing another body in space, it's moving, so it's going towards it. But that object it's going towards is also moving, so it's always moving towards something that is not going to be where it was at that time, if you like. Everything's moving away from each other to bring about this kind of orbital relationship. It's not going to, things don't generally hit, they curve around. Everything's moving around, so it's kind of like, and obviously when things cross other orbits, that's when obviously collisions can occur. And we can see by the asteroid belt that there has been collisions. The asteroid belt, by the way, I mean that the part that exists, the massive band of planet that's broken up into a trillion billion pieces, rocks of all sizes, that every satellite that has gone beyond Mars has charged straight through without consequence. Every satellite has charged straight through that without consequence, and yet not one of those satellites has ever used Mars. Galileo, right up to New Horizons and whatever else has gone out there recently. You know, none of them. Juno, you name it, not one of them has used Mars as a slingshot to go beyond. They've all gone towards Venus. You know, and so you're kind of left with this situation where I still have that shot? Oh, I lost that shot now. This was another shot that's just come in actually, but you're left with this situation where you don't really know the forward motion of your sun, and anyone who postulates a forward motion to the sun, it contradicts all your kind of like all your oh, we've got visitors. Do I hear the sound of a car? Oh, that was very nice of him. The delivery driver actually drove right into the ground because he was scared of the dog. I can't see how anyone could be scared of her, but I guess she is quite big now. She's getting quite big, and I guess a big barking dog is scary. But she's all wags, aren't you? You're all waggers. You're all waggers. Isa. What you do? What you do? She knows you're out there. Come on, stop it. So this was a shot that was just posted. I won't play it. You know, it's very interesting shot, and you'll notice that a lot of activity. So before I look at that shot, let's just go and look at now what I mean by when I say asteroid alley. It doesn't really mean that asteroids are going to hit us, and it doesn't mean they're not going to hit us. It just means that, well, let me show you what it means. So if we, which model is this? I'm just going to very quickly go, I'm just wondering if that is, can you, right, okay, I don't know if that's the best model, so maybe, no, that is the best model. Okay, so let's just move that over there and out the way. And let's just, let's come to, let's come to 2020. See, well, before I go to 2020, these are the flybys that were coming around in kind of like December, January. I think 2018, 2019. Can't look at that date because that date is not relative to that photo. But anyway, let's just keep going back to 2020. You know, there's the pair coming in, Charon, what I call Charon and Kerberos. These are the official. That's the official names of some of the moons of Pluto. Charon being the biggest one that sort of like Robert Harrington discovered, and obviously that's just no different than Galileo saying he's discovered Jupiter and its big moon, Europa, which is why I call the other one here Europa. Because you know, I'm playing with the names here, trying to get you guys to think about this in different ways. But so this is Hydra coming around here, and what I'm calling Hydra, but really there's a bit of confusion here because Hydra is really the big blue one, and I just couldn't account for that in my earlier models. That's why I called it Hydra, and assumed it was one of the twin-tailed objects, and there's just too much evidence that it's the big blue object, and it is finally doing a complete loop around our sun, and we've got so many shots of it. We've got so many corroborating shots of it coming in and coming round, and it just makes so much sense with all that we've seen, and the movements of it, and the timing of it, and so as the sun is charging forward in this direction, we have a kind of like, if you like, you know what, I've completely got this wrong. I'm just sitting here and realizing that I've just made a massive error in all my calculations. Isn't that amazing? This is a moment. I'm having a moment, and I might end up looking at this and saying, oh my god, I've made a massive error. And I have made a massive error. I have made a massive error in my perception of things. So I'm just suddenly looking at this and I'm just like, oh my goodness me. You see, if this object, if Pluto, you understand, it's going, in this model here, it's going forward here. This is its line showing where it's come from, its tail line going, to give you some idea that, to understand that this Pluto isn't just going round the planet X system, as the sun is going on planet X system with the kind of like, you can't see the objects. We zoom right into an aspect of the whole orbital track here. So you're only seeing right over here. And obviously way below the date here, somewhere near where I'm sitting over here would be kind of where the whole planet X system would be, where the actual object that all these things are, these two, our sun and Pluto, are orbiting. But so, though this, you could say this is going this direction, going this way round, but it's always charging forward. Our sun is always charging forward. They're in a orbital relationship with, if you like, the Milky Way. Well, they just are, but they have a orbital relationship with each other as they're charging along, which creates this orbital effect. And what's happening here is, when I'm talking about entrance and exit corridors, and I'm saying the perihelion point of these objects, it is the perihelion point of these objects. But what's happening is, they're really orbiting this object, these moons of Pluto that are coming with where Pluto is so close to our sun, that these objects are coming in off. They have, if you like, their perihelion points are kind of reversed. And so we end up kind of like, how do you apply, this kind of idea of something coming in, orbiting our sun, and then coming back out again and coming in, and we're having a much more concentric orbit, but still always slightly closer to the sun at this front end. And at this front end, so this would be our perihelion point at the other side, and up at what would that be? Where's Earth in that model? That's August. Mercury, Venus. Oh, Earth is there, and that's the 6th. So I've really yeah, I've really I'm really just suddenly realizing something here as well, and it's you can imagine that when objects are coming, so Pluto's moving forward, our sun's moving forward, and planet X, that both these objects is also moving forward in the same direction. Now, objects that come from this, either this way or this way, as they were just going to go right round, like this one, come right round and go back to from whence they came, back orbiting their primary, as in this case I'm calling it Pluto. But there's either a perturbation, and they cut into the front end of our sun's movement here, or if they finally get back to here, then they do a loop round our sun, and it's kind of like, it's a little, it's kind of an interesting it's an interesting orbit, because as they're falling, coming towards this object is obviously going towards them. You've got quite a confused thing, but nonetheless, as whatever objects do come so close to our sun from this object, that they get pulled through here, and they come round, and they go round again. It's more like the rear end, isn't it? It's more like the rear end of our sun, not the front end of our sun. And well, it is the rear end of our sun. It's the tail end of our sun. But for these, their corridors are coming in and going out here. Boosh is you've got these corridors, and once you're at this point here, any objects coming around here, this is not going to be, over here can be, and back here can be, and even the steepest here can be an exit point of objects coming in, and depending on their speed, how far they're going to come out. Obviously, it's fundamentally, you get the idea of entrance and exit corridors of objects coming in, even though the sun's moving there, and it is still true, they are reaching their kind of perihelion point to our sun. At that point, that is their closest point they're going to get to our sun. And like I said in the last video, whether you want to call it, because this thing is releasing iron, can we kind of relate it to peri-iron or peri-Pluto or peri-dwarf planet? It's But this point here that we're in, we're running parallel to these objects, and it's difficult to apply all of Kepler's rules to this complicated orbital relationship. And when we think that Kepler's rules, we say that they're our means of plotting orbital mechanics. Kepler was around about the same time as Galileo, and then after the discovery of Jupiter, 1613, and the first dwarf planet, 915. It was 1613, and the first dwarf planet was discovered in 1596. And after 1596, you go 84 years after, as I talk about, and you come to Isaac Newton discovering this twin-tail object orbiting something. Obviously, he's going to suggest it's the sun, but his models do not suggest that. And then you go it's not 84 years later, but you kind of look at that kind of fact. When you suddenly discover the 84 years between the discovery of Pluto and Neptune 1846, Pluto 1930, and you look at that 84 years, and you see these two 84 years, and you think, well, what is the orbital period of Uranus then? And you discover it's 84, and you're like, oh, well, what would be the orbital duration of Neptune? And you think it couldn't be 2 times 84, and then you're like, oh my god, it's virtually exactly right. It's like 165 instead of 168. And then you're sort of thinking, well, what could be the orbital period of Pluto? And then you suddenly realize it's 3 times 84, and it's just like, what is going on here? What is this astronomical bullshit? Kepler's rules were upgraded, obviously, 84 years after Galileo, after that whole thing with Isaac Newton, who basically added density to the equation and realised that what would change the kind of like the orbital ratios of Kepler's laws were, the only thing that would change that would be density. And so he brought density into the equation, and we saw that as just gravity. But everyone has kind of chopped and changed all of this information one way or another, but without any common understanding of where our sun is going. Sorry about that. We've got a flying kamikaze pilot up above. Without any real attempt to understand our forward motion, none of your astronomics can ever make any sense. The whole model is just confused nonsense, utterly confused nonsense. And then we have Einstein, like I say, and he's saying, during a total solar eclipse in 1906, 1907, something like that, and he's witnessing, and says that the reason you can't see the planets behind the sun during a total solar eclipse is because the gravity of the sun is pulling them in, pulling in those light rays, making it appear behind the sun, and you're just like, it's a big deception that we're in on every front now. And we're getting drawn into something here. And I must admit, I just don't know what to do right now. You know, a little bit kind of like, I've just had to kind of like, my story's a bit too kind of like much to grasp. I realise that in many ways, and it's just like I am seeing that as well, and I'm also seeing, you know, the way things are going and the stories that we're all just running with, and how it just feels like it's all just kind of losing control and going to a bit of a crazy place. It's a painful time. It's a painful time to see so much craziness. You know, I see the new. I watch the Dollar Vigilante sometimes. Oh my goodness me, he's he's blunt and very refreshing sometimes. You know, with a lot of stuff he says, it's just like I'm a big fan. I've got to be honest with you, even though it's kind of like he you know, he says it. He's blunt, isn't he? But yeah, I don't know if you can watch him on YouTube. I think you have to watch him on BitChute and other places, you know. But he was talking about the Tesla batteries the other day and just showing how it took 1,800 gallons of fuel, diesel or whatever, to excavate, you know, the dirt from these mines, the raw materials that will go into making one Tesla battery. That's like more than 100,000 miles of fuel in a car. When you average sort of like, you know, about 60 miles to the gallon, that's like 100,000 miles. Shocking. That's before you even manufacture the car. That's before you even charge the batteries to run the car. You know, it's this war's going to fail, I'm afraid. This war is not going to take off. You know, I don't know if you've just seen this. You know, I don't really want to talk much more about the model, really. I've kind of explored so much of that, and hopefully you're getting a kind of an idea of how complex this thing really is, and you know, the kind of level of flybys that we've seen over the years. Sorry. Maybe I can just go. Yeah, just play it on slow back there, and just it's too fast, really, isn't it, to run through? You know, but the us running it backwards, you know, just to kind of like there's just been so many flybys over the years that we've done charting these objects, and this is only a fraction of them. But the well, that was the shot that the Dollar Vigilante put up the other day. You can't actually see the quote where it says about 100. It burns 1,800 gallons of fuel in a 12-hour shift. Oh my goodness me, it's just incredible. I don't know if that well, I just don't know if that's exactly 1,800 gallons. I mean, that's 1,800 gallons of fuel in a 12-hour shift. So maybe I should kind of like, I don't know how much actually is involved, but basically you can understand that it's without. I'm not trying to take that away from that. I'm just trying to say that unless we have abundant, clean power, this is not a affordable solution. You know, there's got to be. We've got to strike CO2 zero off our environmental agenda. And we've got to replace it with abundant clean energy to fill these batteries, to drive these machines, to do all of our things. You know, we have a sun burning down on us every day, and we see abundant clean energy in operation every day. And we're being led into these massive wars for these gas and all these other things. And it's just all backwards. Everything is backwards at the moment. It's a, you know, there's something else going on here. There's a much bigger thing going on here than any of us are really choosing to see at the moment. And we're all wrapped in this crazy story. And we've got to kind of like see a way out of it. We've got to see a way out of it. And so we've got to start coming up with solutions. And for me, the biggest solution we can really come to in all of this is a focus on abundant clean energy. And not to get dragged into these wars over oil and gas, and to start putting our attention elsewhere. Not a lot really to say here today, I'm afraid. I'm just repeating the same message, and I just feel like that's why I haven't been really making that many videos, because it's kind of like I'm a little bit kind of like not knowing really what to do at the moment. And you know, it's like a bereaving time, isn't it? Because we're seeing so many getting dragged along with all these stories. I mean, so many of us know they're total bullshit. There is different stories out there, and you know the ones I mean. And there's many more I obviously don't know about that you do know about, and vice versa. We're all looking at these crazy stories, and we're all seeing things going on that is just utterly unbelievable. And we will get through this time. Like, I really feel that we're being massively helped at the moment. I don't think we're going to go to war, even though we might be teased and everything else like that. The objective here is to try and draw the other one into going out into a full-scale warring attack, to draw the other one out into the attack. That's what I'm understanding this is all about. And this is, you know, it's a very big thing that's unfolding here, guys. They want this war so badly. And the last quote I'm going to give you is, the last shot I'm going to give you is, I've got it. I haven't got it now. Actually, it's disappeared. But it's what was that? Oh yeah, that was an extraordinary images of the extraordinary images of a magnetic portal, April the 22nd, 2022. That was found quite interesting, because obviously for me, when I see something like that, I see that that's the object itself, and that's the edge of the object, and we're just that's the whole silhouette and everything of the object itself, and that's what we're seeing up there. And but obviously I might be wrong, you know. And but what I was going to bring your attention to the fact the Pope has just turned around and said that he feels this is much more NATO that is causing this conflict in the Ukraine. And him saying those words has got terrifying connotations for NATO in Europe right now. And that's exactly what I said would happen in Laughing Gas in my book, which I published in 2011, 2012. I said that I saw a tragic thing happening that ended with me being destroyed by a tsunami or something. And the first thing that happened was the banks went down. And that was excitement and awe. And the next thing I saw was just famine and starvation everywhere. And that's what's going to happen now on my mind. They can't have their war without hunger. You know, a hungry man is an angry man. And so they can't have their war without anger. And they can't have anger without hunger. And so there's always a famine before a war. One could say it's the precursor for the other. And when you're looking at the ending of a fiat-based system, because you just cannot maintain a fiat-based system anymore, because a fiat-based system, to enforce a fiat-based system where there's no real money behind the currency, it's all just speculative base, it draws its value from its own movement, which is just out of control, credit, which is what it is at the moment. And all the time you have a system operating like that, you've got to be a gun under the table, because there's no value on the table. And when everyone's got the same level of technology, you've just got to bring real value back to the table. That's the only way out of that situation. And so with the poet, I said, you know, that I saw the whole thing, that if Britain leaves the EU, it goes down this situation where we drive a famine to drive a war, and that Europe gets fed into a war with Russia, and that we're the Trojan horse to deliver that, and we get all the benefits of controlling that, or the hegemony, if we're successful. But what I saw was me being destroyed by a tsunami. That this war can never be, because the technology on the table is too fantastic, it will destroy this planet. And for what's really intended. Why they need their war right now, why they need to plunge the vibration of this earth so low right now. It's like a trap, it's like a soul trap. And it's a terrible soul trap to get stuck into, because if they can draw you into war and aggression, they can keep you here, because your vibration will be too low to leave. It's what I call emotional mass. And to attach you to stories which are very heavy, like believing you need to build nuclear power stations on fault lines and tsunami hotspots to stop the carbon dioxide spewing out of volcanoes and earthquakes. And that terrible story of operating this demonizing of carbon dioxide, and all the atrocity and the profit making that's done from that, and all the class systems that are drawn up by environmentalists who see themselves as kind of like special because of their beliefs. That they're an environmental person, that they care, which means that other people don't care. And the left wing becomes as has become in my mind as broken as they perceive the right wing. And as I once perceived the right wing. You know, I've had to go through this massive journey myself. You know, I put myself in through this whole process and seeing how I've been fed lies and bullshit that I believed, and I've got upset with other people because they haven't cared for my values, and now I'm changing my mind, and that needs, you know, I have to point the finger at myself and see how I was radicalized by belief, because of that belief, because of that story, because of that bullshit story. That I empowered agendas whilst I thought I was acting for the betterment of the world. I was engaged in a story that was damaging and plundering this world, literally. Believing that I was an environmentalist. And, you know, I even went along to Extinction Rebellion in 2018 when they were going off to a big protest. And I said, loads of volcanoes are going to go off on this day. And they gave the exact day. And they went off exactly on that day. Not like now, obviously. Now it's just building up now. Now it's become massive. Now the volcano activity is just huge. Now, all your biggest volcanoes are going. Now you're seeing volcanic activity bigger than in Galileo's time, bigger than Isaac Newton's time, bigger than William Herschel's time, and they were big then. You know, La Palma was going off then. Vesuvius was going off then. You know, it's red dust coming down from the sky, reported in kind of like in around the time of Uranus, 1770, whatever it was. I think it's 1774, but I still haven't checked. But it's you know, we are just in a story, or not in a story. Gonna close this here. Run out of space. Love to you all. Take care. Ciao.